Well, welcome back to the morning news. Again, we're joined by Scott Salmonson, Barley and Hops. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Jack.
For our Brewing a Bite, and this week it's all about my favorite beers, IPAs.
Mine too.
Excellent. So, you and I talked last night over an IPA, and there is a plethora of history behind them. So, why don't you go ahead and tell me about a little bit of the history about IPAs, where they originate.
IPA stands for Indian Pale Ale. Pale ales mostly originated in England, and so did the Indian Pale Ale. And the story goes that a brewery called Burton-on-Trent was shipping beers to the British military, and the longest journey they had was about a 6-week voyage on tall ships to the military in in India. And these beers were going bad, so they knew that hops was a antimicrobial preservative, and if they put more hops in the beer, it would survive the journey. At the same time, the beers were very bitter, so they added more malt too, and that increased the alcohol content. So the end results was a more bitter beer that was preserved better with a higher alcohol content, which really made everybody happy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Now, you also mentioned there's a big history of microbrewing and IPAs here in the Temecula Valley. And you said it was Vinny Salerzo?
Yes.
So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about Vinny Salerzo and how he kind of brought this to Temecula?
Okay. Well, here again the story goes that Vinny Salerzo, son of Vincent and Audrey Salerzo, founders of Salerzo's Winery, they were the first ones to grow grapes here in Temecula. Vinny was better at brewing beers than wine, and he started at a very young age, and he basically put 50% too much malt in a beer, and then he tried to correct it by adding 100% too much hops. And he ended up with this beer we now call the West Coast IPA. It's basically a very hoppy double IPA or double version of the original Indian Pale Ale from Britain. This whole style of IPAs has really taken off in the last 2 or 3 years. It's the most popular and fastest growing style, maybe not the most popular, but the fastest growing style in America right now.
Now explain to me what a single, you said there's a single, a double, and this triple IPA, supposed triple IPA. So why don't you tell me what the difference is between the three of them?
The triple IPA is still kind of a developing style. But the regular IPA basically, they start around 40 to 60 IBUs. IBU is an international bitter unit. It's a measure of bitterness. And then 60 to 100 IBUs would qualify a double IPA. And percentage-wise, a regular IPA tends to be about 5 to 6% alcohol, and a double IPA tends to be around 6 to 8%. And then a triple IPA tends to be around 10%. So basically you got 6, 8, and 10. And that kind of, each time you add more hops, you have to add more malt to get a balanced beer. You don't want the beer to be too sweet. You don't want it to be too bitter.
Okay. Well, which one of these is a single IPA? Why don't we open it up and give it a taste?
That would be the Bear Republic Racer 5. This is kind of their flagship IPA. They also make a double called Racer X. Mm-hmm. They're up in Healdsburg, California. Okay. Which coincidentally is about 10 minutes north of Santa Rosa, where Vinny now brews.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can smell the hops. It's very clear. It's a beautiful beer.
Yeah, you're always going to get a big citrus nose, a piney aroma that's typical of the hops plant.
That's excellent. Now you were actually explaining to me earlier, people, if you notice, we're drinking beer out of wine glasses. You actually said when brewers are brewing their beer, a lot of times they test it out of wine glasses.
Well, wine glass is the same thing. For wine, you get to swirl it around. A wine glass, regular glass, the beer's just going to fall out. So a wine glass makes it nice to release the aromas and get that scent. They're judging the color, they're judging the smell, the aroma, as well as the flavor.
Excellent. Now, Hop Fest is something you do the third Saturday of each month at Barley and Hops, correct?
Well, it's the third Saturday of September.
Third Saturday
That's
of
our
September.
third Saturday event.
Okay.
It'll be our third one, even though we've only been open 2 years, today actually. But this is the third annual Hop Fest. Is $25. You get 8 tastings. It's very similar to a lot of the festivals that have been growing in popularity in Southern California.
What goes into like the double and triple? You said more hops, more barley. Is it a different process? Is it a longer process?
It depends. I mean, in the case of this one, which is a double IPA or an Imperial IPA from Sam Caliglione of Dogfish, it's continuously hopped for 90 minutes. So he figured out a machine that pops little hop pellets into the boil for a continuously 90-minute period. He also does a 60 and a 120, which are his regular and triple IPAs. So that's one way of doing it. In the case of Hop 15 here from Port Brewing, this beer, they use 15 different kinds of hops and they introduce it into the boil every 15 minutes. So in my opinion, this is one of the most well-balanced triple IPAs there are. Maybe it's because there's so many different varieties that not one of them stands out.
Now you brought along with you some pretzels and hummus, and that's something I haven't found at any other bar. That's something very unique to Barley and Hops.
Yeah, you find it at sometimes some finer establishments with pita bread or something, but this is something I did at my last restaurant that went over real well, and something we've done here. We give it to you complimentary. You know, I've always been a big advocator of having something to drink and something to eat as quickly as possible. For our instance today, it's a good palate cleanser. It'll kind of help us to clear our palates for the next IPA. And when you're tasting beers, like if we were doing a bunch of different styles, you typically want to finish with an IPA because they are a very bitter beer and they will kind of contaminate your palate, so to speak, for a lighter beer.
Okay. Well, why don't we get into the second one here? You said this is Dogfish Head Double IPA. Now you also claim it's